Welcome back to Mighty Habits. I'm your host, Steven. And today we're going to take a deep dive into a story that's wild, like a roller coaster through, I don't know, a philosophy library or something. Picture this, okay? A hard-nosed, investigative journalist sets out to debunk Christianity, armed with skepticism and a whole lot of legal know-how. This guy's determined to prove it's all, smoke and mirrors, but what he finds turns his world upside down. It's a story of faith, doubt, and the power of evidence, even the most deeply held beliefs you know. Our main character in this intellectual thriller is Lee Strobel, former legal editor for the Chicago Tribune. This wasn't some abstract theological debate for him, though. His wife had converted to Christianity. And Strobel, a staunch atheist at the time, was, deeply skeptical. But instead of dismissing her newfound faith, he puts his investigative skills to the test, right? Spends 2 years meticulously researching the historical, philosophical, and scientific arguments for and against Christianity. Strobel approached this like a lawyer building a case, determined to expose the flaws in the Christian narrative. He dove into the historical accuracy of the Gospels, scrutinized the evidence for the resurrection, and examined the claims of Christ's divinity. He even looked into the transformation of the disciples after Jesus' death, trying to understand what could have possibly led these ordinary men to become such, fervent believers. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so a skeptic investigates Christianity. What's so surprising about that? Well, here's where things get interesting. The deeper Strobel dug, the more he found himself wrestling with the weight of the evidence. It wasn't some sudden, like a blinding flash of conversion or anything. Instead, it was a gradual, almost reluctant shift in his worldview. As he grappled with this historical data, eyewitness accounts, and expert opinions he was encountering. Along the way, Strobel encountered a range of perspectives and interpretations. He discovered that even within Christian scholarship, there were varying viewpoints and ongoing debates. This wasn't a black and white issue. It was a complex tapestry of historical accounts, theological arguments, and personal experiences. So to really understand the turning points in Strobel's investigation, we need to look at the key areas he focused on. The Passion City Church podcast does a great job, breaking down his journey into 4 major pillars. These really seem to make him rethink his skepticism. First up is the historical reliability of the Gospels. Now, I know what you're thinking, weren't those texts written decades after the events they describe? And wouldn't that, make them unreliable as historical sources? Well, that's what Strobel wanted to find out. He dug into, really into the details of textual criticism, comparing the Gospels to other ancient documents and examining the evidence for their authorship and transmission. What he found surprised him. The Gospels were written much closer to the events they described than many other ancient texts that we consider reliable. Strobel was really struck by the fact that the Gospels were written within the lifetime of eyewitnesses who could have challenged their accuracy. He also discovered that early non-Christian sources, like the Roman historian Tacitus and the Jewish historian Josephus, corroborated key details about Jesus' life and death. This gave Strobel pause. Maybe the Gospels weren't the unreliable fabrications he had always assumed. Next, Strobel tackled the resurrection, a claim that is central to Christian belief, but often dismissed as a myth or a legend. Strobel, the skeptic, was ready to debunk any flimsy arguments. He examined the various theories that attempted to explain away the resurrection, like the swoon theory, which claims that Jesus didn't actually die on the cross, or the stolen body theory, which suggests that Jesus' disciples stole his body to fake his resurrection. But the more he looked into these alternative explanations, the more holes he found. He was struck by the fact that the earliest accounts of the resurrection emphasized the empty tomb, a detail that wouldn't have been included if the disciples had simply stolen the body. He was also really intrigued by the numerous eyewitness accounts of the risen Christ, not just individuals, but groups of people, including skeptics like Jesus' brother James. Could all of these people have been hallucinating, or was there something more to this story? The third pillar of Strobel's investigation was the deity of Christ. Did Jesus actually claim to be God? And if so, what evidence supports that claim? Strobel dove into the scriptures, carefully examining the words and actions of Jesus, as recorded in the Gospels. He was struck by the many instances where Jesus claimed attributes that were traditionally reserved for God, things like forgiving sins and claiming authority over the Sabbath. He also noticed how Jesus' followers, who were devout Jews, readily accepted these claims and even began to worship him as divine. This led Strobel to question his previous assumption that Jesus was simply a wise teacher or a moral prophet. Could it be that he was something more? Finally, Strobel turned his attention to the transformation of the disciples. These were ordinary men, fishermen, tax collectors, who had everything to lose by following Jesus. And yet, after his crucifixion, they went from hiding in fear to boldly proclaiming the resurrection, even when faced with, like, persecution and death. What could have possibly caused such a radical shift in their behavior? Strobel considered the possibility that they were, simply delusional, or that they'd concocted their resurrection story for their own gain. But he found it hard to believe that these men, who had known Jesus intimately, would have been willing to die for a lie. He was particularly struck by the Apostle Paul, a former persecutor of Christians who had a dramatic conversion experience and became one of the most ardent proponents of the faith. What could have possibly led Paul, a man of intellect and status, to abandon his previous beliefs and embrace a movement that was so widely ridiculed and persecuted? So there you have it, the four pillars of Strobel's investigation: the historical reliability of the Gospels, the evidence for the resurrection, the deity of Christ, and the transformation of the disciples, each one a potential crack in the foundation of his atheism, forcing him to confront the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was more to this whole Christianity thing than he initially assumed. But Strobel's journey wasn't just about intellectual assent. It was about grappling with the implications of these findings for his own life. If Christianity was true, what did that mean for him? How could he reconcile his previous beliefs with the evidence he had uncovered? And what would it mean to embrace this faith that had once seemed so foreign and so improbable? Strobel's journey reminds me of, that feeling you get when you're piecing together a complex puzzle. At first, the pieces seem, random and disconnected. But as you start to fit them together, you begin to see a bigger picture, emerging. And sometimes that picture could be completely different from what you expected. That's what happened to Strobel. He started his investigation hoping to, dismantle Christianity, expose it as, a sham. But the more he learned, the more he realized that the pieces fit together in a way that he hadn't anticipated. The historical evidence, the eyewitness accounts, the philosophical arguments, they all pointed towards a conclusion that he had initially resisted. And here's the thing about truth. It has a way of getting under your skin, even when you try to push it away, Strobel couldn't just ignore the evidence he had uncovered. It challenged his worldview, forced him to confront his own biases, and ultimately led him to a place he never thought he'd end up, embracing the Christian faith. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to believe, but I think Strobel's story offers a valuable lesson for all of us, whether we're, people of faith or not. It's a reminder that genuine inquiry can lead to unexpected places. It's a challenge to be open to new ideas, even when they challenge our, preconceived notions. And it's an invitation to approach life with a sense of curiosity and a willingness to be surprised by what we discover. So if you find yourself wrestling with big questions, if you're curious about faith or spirituality, or if you're simply looking for an intellectual adventure, I encourage you to check out Lee Strobel's work. His journey is a testament to the power of honest inquiry and the transformative potential of encountering truth, even when it comes from the most unexpected sources. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the fascinating world of Lee Strobel. Until next time, keep those minds open, keep those questions coming, and keep on exploring the mysteries of the universe.